Welcome back, everyone, to Confessions of a Loveaholic. I am your host, Emmy Hernandez, and I have a special guest with you today. Her name is Kara Payton, and let me tell you all about her because she's got a killer bio. We have a lot of things in our background in common, and it's super fun to have a fellow healer, a fellow evangelical, not religious, but everything around healing, trauma, and changing people's lives. Kara is an author, meditation guide, speaker, and counselor with 5 years of experience in events productions and a volunteer team building for Tony Robbins. Woo woo, big Tony Robbins fan here. She is the host of a globally top-ranked show, the Happiness Habit podcast. She dares women to be authentic about who they truly are and end self-abandonment, heal the nervous system and emotional addictions, and stop keeping the secret of you. And we're all about healing and rewiring and stopping addictions of all kinds here. Kara, thank you so much for being on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Emmy. Happy to be here.
I am so ready to dig into some of this world. And this is actually the first time we're going to be talking about Tony Robbins. And I think that's actually one of the places I want to kick off here because that sort of leads us into some of these other things. So how did you get involved in the Tony Robbins world? I'm curious.
A midlife crisis of all things. I kind of had the white picket fence and the big house and the Mercedes and the big job and the fancy everything. And I thought that attaining all of those things would be a very fast track to filling the hole that had been there for pretty much my entire life since childhood. And I was very, very distraught one afternoon walking into my house after a Bible study and realizing that I had checked off all the things on the list, but I was still completely and totally empty. And it was this visceral, like, dread that just poured over me like warm cement. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I don't have any more carrots to chase. And I still feel this way. And it was just utter panic. Fast forward after kind of having a knockdown, drag out, scream out to God moment, where it's like, you know what? If this is all there is, why can I not be happy? But ultimatum, if this isn't all there is to life, break me open. Show me what I'm missing. Show me this other side. Whatever's not here, where is it? And I feel like the universe was like, hold my beer. And I ended up at a Tony Robbins event pretty soon after that. I bought some tickets in a panic on a dial for tickets type of sales pitch. And I was like, I'll just go figure out what this is. And he was pretty much the only motivational guy at the time that any of us knew about back in 2015. And hook, line, and sinker, I went and I drank the Kool-Aid. And then I ended up a volunteer, and then I ended up a staff, and then it was touring with him for a lot of years until the events shut down in the pandemic. But that is where Tony enters probably the happiest chapter of my life for sure.
I absolutely love that. And I know now with a lot of the things that are going on in social media, a lot of people try to drag Tony down. I continue to be a fierce advocate for his work and for how he's personally changed my life. And the events are nothing compares. And it's thanks to Tony and Tony's work and people who have learned Tony's work that I can tell you that's why I was able to heal my PTSD. So Tony Robbins will always have a very special place in my heart. And I continue going to events and I continue sending people to his events because it's just absolutely amazing. So I'm so happy. And I also crew, so do a lot of volunteer stuff. I haven't been back since post-COVID, but looking forward to going back. So I'm happy that you found him as well. I think we found him the same year. I think my first event was 2015 with him. So small world, small world. So Kara, can you tell us a little bit more about this midlife crisis that you mentioned? And sort of what are some of the things that you found out that was going on, that were going on there, that you realized, I can actually do something about this?
Well, I think a lot of us, we live our lives in a default without realizing that was the default. We kind of assume that life is going to unfold as a separate matter of fact state of things. Like it's just life. And my life just unfolds, but it's still all inevitable. It's still it's still just ground that's laying itself before me, and I don't really participate in a big way. And I think a lot of us do have this belief, even though we understand that we can participate in some very small things, we inevitably still think of life as a bully or a friend or a partner, or we don't understand that we have a huge capacity for shifting and changing and making it unfold in a different way, or even retrospectively reframing things that have already laid out. So I was no different. The things that I had been born into, domestic abuse and trauma and being an adopted child, or kind of having this orphan lifestyle up until a certain point of, my teenage years being very tumultuous, a teenage pregnancy, my own domestic abuse, my own problems with really, really horrendously unhealthy, toxic people, self-destruction, poverty. And I just lived behind all these things. And so what I realized was this compensatory life that I had built up by, okay, what's the solution to all of this stuff that I've been through? Well, money would fix it. Being a better mom than my mom would fix it. Being more stable, or even just not even stable, just building up structures to appear more stable, that would fix it. So I unwisely didn't question the life as it unfolded. I just thought, okay, I'm going to build things on top of this life to make it look and appear like I had figured something out. So if you looked at me from the outside, being born in all this chaos and product of divorce and product of violence and product of all this stuff, and then you saw me, you automatically assumed I had some sort of glow up, that, oh, she grew up and she determined her own fate. We say the master of her own fate, and we give a lot of hyperbole and we speak in very floral language to church up somebody who basically just, I'm going to chase the dollar to try and fill the hole that my unhealed and unmet childhood needs left. So that was no exception to that rule. So fast forward to this moment when I realized my methods didn't work, it was very unnerving for me, because here I am in my mid 20s thinking that I had somehow figured out this hack or this cheat code to making my life appear, thinking that appearances over time would solidify into reality, solidify into me feeling fulfilled. And when I realized that wasn't going to work, it was catastrophic for my mind and my heart to realize there is no fake it till you make it type of thing, because I was still a fake, aware that I was a fake, trying to off-put anything, but trying to show other people that I was not fake. So insert pure panic mode, where I went into kind of an identity crisis of, if I can't fake it to make that work, what else am I supposed to do? And so luckily, in this trauma of uncoupling, that my system to life was flawed, inherently flawed, I was given an invitation to question down to the root of my whole existence. The cool thing is about when you finally figure out, you get to the end of yourself and the end of your ideas, you don't have any other tactics. You don't have any other tricks. You're unhappy and you're unhappy. And there's no other answer except to really go back and question things. And the things that I ended up questioning were the catalyst to creating some significant change. Most people say I'm a single mom, and they give an identity and a whole lot of string of beliefs. Again, you say a single mom to one person, she's going to picture something very different. You say a single mom to somebody else, and they're going to picture, they're going to picture somebody who's striving and strong and making it, and it's got a good context. It's got a hero of her own life, and she's forging the way, and she's super strong. And then you say single mom to somebody else, and they think downtrodden, poverty, unhealthy, you ruined, used up, damaged goods, probably dramatic, probably addicted, probably lonely, probably unhappy, all of these things. It's just what we've chosen to attribute. So the cool thing is when we turn that inward on ourself, we look at our life, we look at ourself, our life and our identity, and we start to go, okay, what have I attributed? What have I tacked on to my life, my belief system about life is hard, life is a dance, life is a battle, life is a gift, life is an adventure. And myself, I am, and fill in the gaps. I'm a single mom. What does that mean? I'm a boy mom. What does that mean? I'm a white female. What does that mean? I'm in my 30s. What does that mean? I'm, I'm fat, I'm big, I'm tall, I'm short, I'm infertile, I'm addicted, like any of those things. And you realize how many different things you can stop, pause, put a question mark on it, and change it. And so, long-winded way of answering your question, it was basically in that chapter of my life that I stripped away all these periods and all these punctuation marks that made everything permanent, put a question mark, and then I started actually one by one, just started answering them in a new way. And I mean to tell you, as metaphorical as it is to say that, it really changed the entire path of my life going forward.
It truly is so powerful, isn't it? The idea of identity and how we create it and how we can command it and the words that we use. And that was, I think it was my introduction with Tony as well, when he shared the power of the words that we use, the power that the phrases that we impose upon ourselves and what we keep reiterating, right? And it's not just like, we all have backgrounds. We all have whatever it is that happened to us in childhood, but it's about what we choose to do with it now and how we choose to reframe what happened in the past. And I love that you said that earlier. Do you want to go into giving us either an example or some examples around what does it take and what does it mean to reframe something that happened in the past? What's something that maybe you did or that you do to help others, to help them start this process of giving new meaning to things that happened so that they can create a level of empowerment and a different feeling in the nervous system now and in their physiology versus what it's currently doing to them?
That's a great question. And, to your point with the language, Tony talks about focused language and physiology. And with our language, we do have the power to just speak without even knowing it. And if we put it on loop and repeat it, it is subconscious. It's something that we've gotten memorized into our system, and our body lives out that reality, whether we're even aware of it or not. And so reframing something, really the idea behind changing your language, you have to, first of all, the awareness that when you find the awareness of that language, it's a beautiful thing. I would say that the best way to go about reframing something is taking everything from when you know who you are and your identity is the pinpoint destination, your finish line, and you can reverse engineer everything from that point. When I know my identity and the identity I want to embody, because in that weird shaken up space of knowing that you're not happy and you're not where you want to be, it's like you got a beautiful dynamic, but you can also get in a lot of trouble because you have the identity that you hold and the identity that you want. And the identity, this kind of exchanging process, it's getting really kind of detached and removed and going very objective of like, okay, Honesty, not shame, honesty about the behaviors that are no longer serving me, the beliefs behind that, how does she look? How does she wake up in the morning? How does she carry her body? How does she carry her voice? Like, how does she make other people feel? And recognizing when you have an unglamorous truth coming out of that, like, oh gosh, that is true. And instead of shaming it, making it a part of you, you just identify the behavior. When you can separate, these are the behaviors and the habits and the environments this person has created and not an identity piece, it's almost like this self-examination that doesn't get really critical. Like, critical of the behavior and not the person is a really huge discernment to make. If you don't feel like you can go into that process yet, give yourself some time, sit with some grace, find out how you can love on yourself and love all the pieces of you, knowing that it's not isolate to, we all have bad and good. And sometimes we can focus so heavily on the bad that we neglect to see that there is good. And all of us humans, we have both sides. So getting into that and pinpointing, okay, what would it look like if it were exactly what I want? There's a reason why you and your ideal self, you can tell me what she looks like. You can tell me how she stands. You can tell me what she wears. You can tell me how she eats and takes care of herself. There's a reason you can go into detail about what she thinks, how she speaks, how she feels, because that ideal self is not, it's yours, it's your vision. It's not some mysterious, distant thing that you will get to someday. And I love when people say, they have the someday version of themselves, a someday version of their life. But the problem is we hold this someday version of ourselves and it's a strong arm and it's held out. The problem is as we move forward with this someday version, this doesn't ever get closer. We don't ever close that gap. We just keep moving forward. And then the someday version is still someday. And creating that ideal self and identifying those pieces and then drawing it closer to us by day 1 of taking care of myself like this, day 2 of dressing like this ideal self, day 3 of walking how they want, having the posture that they would have, having the beliefs that they would have, having the habits they would have. We start to chip away at this distance and now we are her. That is who she is. And I don't remember your original question because I go on tangents and I start to just like riff on things, but that's how I developed that fortitude of who is she? How does she stay? I used to be the figure it out, hyper independent girl, born out of necessity from trauma. And that's not the life story I wanted to carry anymore. So I had to let it crash to the ground, put it down several times, and then re-identify and then move into it. And sometimes there's going to be things that come up that you have to deal with, like a trauma that when it comes to the returning backward, I had to understand that in my language, there were needs that I was meeting by holding these words, by having these beliefs, by having these triggers. And I needed to ask myself, okay, who was she and how was she meeting her needs? And it's usually these unhealthy habits, these unhealthy environments, and these unhealthy relationships are the highest informing way to reaffirm that identity all the time. So if I can not only reverse engineer my identity and then figure out what habits, what environments, and what relationships this person needs to have, you will find a different way to meet your need. And then your emotional addiction to the old you breaks.
I love it. You brought up so many different things that I want to cover some of these and share my experience with it. So I'm so happy you brought up the identity around single mom. This is one of the things, that phrase in particular, I work a lot specifically with my clients who are here working on their love life and they want to call in their husband. So the power of identity, right? If they're saying, I'm a single mom, and sometimes they say it multiple times a day, multiple times a week, multiple times a month, a year to different people. It's like, you are reiterating that you're going to stay single.
Mm-hmm.
So until I bring that up and they're like, well, how else do I say it? I mean, like, well, you can take your pick, but I have some suggestions. Or like, you are a woman and you have a child, or how many children you have. And they're like, Oh, right. So like, first of all, why does it have to be an identity unless sometimes we use certain identities to perpetuate our victimhood? And I speak for myself, not from the state of single mom, but I used to get so much attention when I got really, really sick, because it was the only time that my mom paid attention to me, because otherwise, if I was fine, I wouldn't get attention. So I would create unconsciously, not on purpose, unconsciously, these horrible, horrible situations where I would spend once every 3 months, 3 days just vomiting in my mom's bathroom when I was in high school. And this continued even after I left her home, because my physiology didn't know any different. It didn't know what to do. And it wasn't until I had a hard look at myself, to your point around the power of being critical of the behavior. I call it with my clients, I said, you are not your blueprint. Okay, here's your blueprint, here's the behaviors, and here's you. Your identity's over here. So I'm going to be really fucking mean to your blueprint, and we're going to call that out. Okay, because it's an it. Your blueprint is an it. The behavior is an it. You are not an it, right? As an identity, you are a human being that we are perpetuating certain blueprints because, first of all, we don't know they're there. And second, once we become aware of it, that's not enough, right? Awareness is just step one. Then we have to start recognizing, does it still serve me, and does it not? And if it doesn't serve me, what the beep am I going to do to start shifting this, right? And we have to really, truly be critical, as you said, because we can't just continue to pet it and be like, oh, well, I know where you came from. It's like, yes, I do know where you came from. And guess what? Like, I love my shoes that my mom kept from when I was like 3 months old. But guess what? If I try to wear them now, it's gonna really hurt, right? So it's like, you have outgrown those shoes, my lovely. Stop wearing the shoes that, no, just because they're cute doesn't mean you get to keep them, right? You can keep them in storage if you want, or send them off to Goodwill or to the landfill. But we no longer have to continue to suffer in the same blueprint, because we can step out of that, right? I absolutely love that you brought this up, because it is something that I can talk about for hours, and I bring it up a lot on my retreats and my clients, because it's kind of a never-ending story, isn't it? Like, once you start unraveling one, you keep going.
Especially when it comes to what you're talking about with the addiction to victimhood. Growing up with a mother who met all of her needs and was completely helplessly addicted to the idea of being a victim, I learned from a master of manipulation. I learned how to bend anyone's perspective of me and perception of me to be the damsel in distress that needed to be saved. And I was able to wield and manipulate men into all different kinds of contortions. And my life became comfortable, very comfortable, because I was in this, I mean, and it was comfortably uncomfortable because I still wasn't where I wanted to be. I still wasn't living how I needed to live, but I was not having to stretch myself. I was not having to challenge myself, because all I had to do, when anybody would turn to me or look at me or accuse me or want me to grow or expand or be a higher integrous version of myself, all I had to do was talk about where I came from. Oh, but this happened to me. But you don't understand. This is where I came. I'm a single mom. I'm broke. I came from, I I had to sleep without power. And it's addicting, because it also helps you to do this. When you get into the wounds of your childhood trauma, it feeds it even more. It's like you're taking this perfect storm where I'm already addicted to my victimhood, and then you go into the healing modalities and try to offer compassion and grace to your inner child, and that's actually healthy work, but you've weaponized it and made it toxic work, because now it's feeding the need of being a victim even more, except you're an adult and now you're embodying the inner child, and in almost in a very unhealthful way, you're validating the inner child's shadow side that wanted the attachment at all costs, even if it meant manipulating, even if it meant crying, even if it meant getting sick for 3 days for your mom. And so that was a very hard habit to break. And that was actually the last piece of mine that broke, because I got into very heavy doses of wanting to call everybody out while I'm building my boundaries and ending my toxic relationships and learning all about narcissism, wherever that fit in at some point in the journey, I was able to blame, all the exporting of the blame. And because I was able to blame, it built this victim statue even higher. And it became a monster before I realized I'm completely isolate. I'm on an island here and I don't let anybody in because I don't trust anybody, because trusting somebody would mean that maybe I participate in some risk, but I'm only just this innocent victimized child. So it was the last leg of the very standing statue I had built as an idol toward victimization and my own personal victimhood that I was so proud to wave around to everyone. And that hard kick in the ass that I gave myself, finally realizing like this mirror that was a funhouse mirror. And even though I was being honest with myself for years and years and years, I had still refused to scrub the underlying layer. So it's like, yeah, that mirror might be absolutely spick and span Windex clean, but honey, it's a funhouse mirror. It's not even one that's accurate whatsoever. So that was it. It's the self-development journey, and that self-honesty journey. It's just like you said, layer after layer after layer after layer. And once you think you've reached a certain level, you realize, oh my gosh, and this upsets the entire order. And now I'm sorting with even less stuff. It's like going through a miscellaneous junk drawer. You're minimizing, you're cleaning, you're organizing it, but it's a junk drawer. You don't need any of it.
For those of you listening, might be thinking, oh my God, this sounds like a lot of work. Why would we go through this? And I'll tell you personally why I went through it. And I'm not gonna lie to you, it is a lot of work. But for me, I can tell you, because I did this work, I no longer live in constant, consistent pain physiologically. Okay. I used to live, like, truly suffer with acid in my body 24/7. And I used to take to 22 painkillers a day. Okay. So that's on the immune system side, like the nervous system regulation. Because of being able to take accountability for my own actions, guess what? And all of you heard this from episode 1. Yes, I was kidnapped by a narcissist and was manipulated by him for 2 years and had to file for bankruptcy. So was that part true? Yes. But you know what else was true? There was a part of me that attracted that because somehow it fulfilled my void. So that then I can't go into like, but you don't understand, like, this happened to me, and like, right? Like, I had to snap out of that. So I no longer see myself as his victim. It's like, oh, this happened. So can there be two realities at the same time? Absolutely. You have to choose the one that empowers you to be able to move forward. And because of all that work, and me being accountable for looking in the mirror and be like, what did I participate in? How did I fulfill this void? How did I fulfill this prophecy? How did I fulfill this blueprint? That's when I was finally able to get to a point where I could regulate my nervous system and realize that no more did chaos excite me, but calmness and groundedness excited me. And that's what felt good. That was my new home. Tony calls it the emotional home, right? I remember him talking about that date with Destiny. So I created a new emotional home. And it wasn't until then that I was able to attract my soulmate, the love of my life, Matt, because that man, OMG, is my rock, my grounding, my everything. He is the Zen to my hurricane. And because of that, I had to become my own Zen first. That's what's important. Am I in Zen 24/7? Oh, of course not. I don't think any human being is. But that level of freedom of I don't give a beep about what people think or say about me, like I am true to myself, that level of freedom only comes with doing this level of work. What would you say, Kara?
My favorite scripture is John 8:32, the truth will set you free. But I'm going to amend that. The truth will set you free. Seeking that truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. Because, when we're talking about, yeah, I can call him a narcissist. I can call my dad an abuser. I can call my neighbor. You can, anybody that is victimizing you, anybody that, if they are victimizing you, who's a victim? You are. If you have to blame somebody, if you're calling someone your abuser, while that may be true and why you might have every right to fight for that reality, there's a point in time, and you may need to for a while. You may need to say, I was abused. I was a victim. I was this, that, and the other. I was manipulated. I was rejected. I was abandoned. You will continue to pipe that story as long as it's continued to meet your needs. But my challenge is for you, if you recognize that you are engrossed in unfulfillment, if you are unhappy still, if that he's an abuser and I'm a victim no longer serves you, no longer feeds you, my challenge is that story might be growing old. It might be expiring. It might be falling off. It might be time. You're outgrowing it. It's shedding itself. It's cracking apart. The exoskeleton of that story no longer fits. So in order to call someone your abuser, you literally have to hand them the power over you, your power. Because if there's an abuser, there's a victim. That's the way it works. If you no longer want to be a victim, you can't sit there and just hand over fist give somebody blame for your story, for how it worked out for you. You have to be willing to be a villain in somebody else's story to be a hero in yours. You have to be willing to no longer be your abuser's secret keeper in order to rescue yourself. If you want to be a victim, fine, be a victim, but you can't be a victim and your own rescuer. You're one or the other. So in that, for those who are not necessarily ready to overturn those stones, if it's meeting your need and you're uncomfortable, you're not even listening to this podcast. You're not asking any of those questions. For those of you listening who are kind of triggered by all of this, you're not ready yet, and that's fine. There will come a time when your inner voice, your higher sense of self, your inner knowing, Holy Spirit, universe, guidance, whatever you want to call it, is inching you toward that truth. We are truth seekers. We are storytellers. We want to tell the hero's journey. It's why every single story in humanity has some aspect of a hero's journey to it. There's always a hero. There's always a guide. There's always a villain. There's always an obstacle. There's always a victor. There's always a story. There's always some kind of happy ending or a sacrificial ending where it doesn't end so well, but somebody was able to lay their life on the line for their friends, or true love's kiss, or whatever the hell. These stories all play the same template. There's a reason for that. Your inner guide will continue to call it toward truth. And the truth will be the core main vein that continues to strip all these outer layers and strip all these stories and strip all these false identities and strip all these protectors and strip all these needs that you've met by false way. Because the truth is the only thing that will sustain you. Authenticity is the only thing that will sustain you. We're born with two needs: the need for attachment, the need to attach to a caregiver to need to get our needs met, and it wins every single time. But the second need is the need for authenticity. And all that means, we hear authenticity as a buzzword, we hear it so much. Authenticity, to scrub the language and give the simplest definition, is when your body sends you a signal, you listen to it. This doesn't feel right. I'm not happy. I don't feel safe. That's enough information. Whatever it is, that if we were to able to listen to that all the time, our authentic connection to ourselves being unbroken and unwavering, to self-reference, just basically to turn inward and go, hey, how do you feel? What is that? What's true for me? Where am I? Who am I? What do I want? And properly answer those without Googling it, how to live your life, or YouTubing how to do something, or asking friends or reference points, or learning an external way to answer your question, and you turn inward, you're unstoppable. You're completely unstoppable. I would bet that that is the answer to most people's trauma, most people's need, most people's ultimate pain point, and the bridge that will gap them to the other side of the other life and the other self that they've been so desperately trying to get to.
100% agree, Kara. Everything, 100%. Spot on. Magic right there. And on the point of authenticity and being able to go inward, I think it's important to work with someone who knows this work. And I want people to know, where can they find you? How can they learn more about how to go deep with this work about stepping into their true selves and healing all the things that maybe they thought they couldn't heal? How can they find out more about you? And maybe what are some of the things that they can do with you?
I made myself an online home for people, and I consider my website kind of a safe space for somebody to go hide out. If they need a meditation, if they need something free, if they need to kind of just read or question, or they're curious about something, but they just need a safe purgatory spot to sit and figure it out where they need to go next, karapayton.com is a place that I went and created with the intention of the girl who is just seeking, and she has no idea what she needs. She just needs to be heard. She needs to be understood. She needs to be seen. She needs to be connected to. She needs a safe touch base. And so there's a self-paced course on there right now. There is meditations for free. There's a subconscious self audit that if you have lumps under the rug, you have things that you believe, but you don't know what holds you back or why. You're listening to this and you're like, I know there's a lot of stuff in my way, but Kara, I ain't got a clue what it is or where it is or the right questions to ask. I that the subconscious audit is there, and it's basically just me helping go, okay, here's a flashlight. Let's look around. What do you see? Teaching you how to ask yourself better questions. Like, how do I feel? I remember years ago in the first part of my journey, somebody asked me how I felt. And I was like, I've spent years trying not to feel. So you want to ask me how I feel? I don't know. I'm pretty gifted and talented at telling you what I don't want and what I don't feel. But I don't feel anything. I'm so disembodied and I'm so good at numbing, distracting, and avoiding. I couldn't tell you how I feel right now. So that my website's kind of a catch-all for all of the seekers out there in any stage and phase trying to figure it out.
I love it. There you have it, karapayton.com. It'll all be in the show notes, but I wanted you to hear it directly from the goddess herself. Kara, any final words for our listeners today?
I don't know why that made me instantly emotional. I always, when I think of what I would say, I always picture a younger, lost, insecure person, insecure version of me. And like, I wish I could go back and just put my hands on her shoulder and say, you got this. Like, you will get there. Just slow down, chill out, stop trying to figure it all out right now. That the burden of making a huge difference in your today right now is not yours to bear. Like, let go, open up, chill out, calm down, take a breath. You will get there.
Thank you so much, Kara. You were an absolute delight to have on our show. And remember, listeners, you deserve safe love. We'll see you on the next episode.